This video is a guide to the energy expenditure practical write-up and is linked to the document with examples of prior work, which you can find under the G005 tab on Moodle. If you look at the document, I've broken it up into different sections and we'll just work through them and explain what's good or what's not so good about the different sections. The first part to look at is under section A in the abstract. This abstract is good, it's quite short, it's less than 100 words as indicated in the write-up guidelines in the lab manual. But the good thing about it particularly is that it actually has data in there. When you're putting in information into your abstract, you should include your results, and it's important to have the original data in here. And you can see that in this example here we've got the comparison between cycling and lying down shown as median and range with a significance, a p-value there of 0.01. It's not sufficient to simply write in a p-value and not put the data with it. There's also indication here that there's a correlation between heart rate and energy expenditure. Moving to section B, and we look at the introduction. What I have here in B1, B2 and B3 are both opening sections from 3 different pieces of work showing the start of the introduction. And each of these, they introduce the concept for indirect calorimetry and provide appropriate references. This is the type of thing you should be looking at. You should be looking to introduce the topic, say why you did what you did, and providing some appropriate citations in order to support the methodology used. I've included section C here, and this just shows that it's always a good idea to put in the hypothesis that are being tested, and these can be found or adapted from the lab manual. Looking at section D, we have various sections in D, D1, D2 just show again opening parts to the methods section, showing where the sample comes from, and some general description of the measurements that are taking place. D3 here has some description of the apparatus used for the measurements and description of the Douglas bag. You should note also that in here each one has written the manufacturer of the equipment, and where you use a specific piece of equipment, then it's a good idea to use this or to include this in the write-up. D4 talks about the ethical implications of the study, where all participants are there to sign an informed consent form. Here they have included an appendix, which is not absolutely necessary, but again, when you did your practicals, consent forms were used, and also there was an additional form to ask about the general health, and that should be included as well. I've also put in here where it says using a Douglas bag method, ref included, a reference was included there, but it wasn't ideal, so I've omitted that from this particular document. D5 just shows that it's important to, as well as describe the actual physical things you did in terms of conducting the experiment, it's very important to also include the analytical methods. So here, this students included a description of the software used for the analysis of the data. As we move into section E, we see results. Now the key thing about results is whenever you put in a table, you put in a figure, you've also got to have textual description, paragraphs written around it to actually put the data into some type of context. So even here, just an opening line, table 1 shows demographics of the subject of the field is an important introduction before you start actually putting your data in there. So every time there's a table in there, you must actually sort of say what the table adds to the description of the study. Now these tables here are not too bad. I mean, they're not perfect, but they are they're okay. So table 1, we have age, weight, height. That's just the basic demographics of the participants in the study. And note here that there's a legend showing that the values shown are mean plus or minus standard deviation. And that's okay for a very simple table. You know, that sort of simple legend, and the rest of it is very self-explanatory. You can see that E2 does the same, and E3. All very, very simple. Nice straightforward table, just shows the people that were included in the study that was done. With E4, we start to see actually some data collected from the students. And again, this has been laid out. It's got a title of the table here, it has the measures, it has all the units in there, and it has the description of the data. This time it is included as mean plus minus standard deviation. And the explanation of the abbreviations is all there in the legend, which is very good. One thing that's slightly odd in this table is that they've included both the means and the medians because they state that the data was not parametric. In this situation, what they actually should have done is just included the median data for the energy expenditure and then put the median plus the range after it, rather than including mean and standard deviation. So that's something to look out for. When it is non-parametric data, you should put all of the data on that line as the median and the range, and it's also, again, as we mentioned in class, not appropriate to mix mean plus or minus standard deviation with medians and ranges on the same line. Also in here now we start to have some data analysis included, and in the legend here it does say that values share in the same superscript, significantly different, with these letters denoting significance. I included E5 here because E5 again is just an example of the text that will be written around the data that's included in terms of tables and things. This is just a nice example of a short paragraph explaining what's going on in one of the tables. E6, we show another table of data. I've included this one here. The table's okay, it's fine. We've got, again, the units, we have the descriptors in here, the legend says what's going on. What this person has done, though, is arranged it in columns rather than in rows, as you sort of might ordinarily expect. It's fine, you can clearly see what's going on, and the description in the legend sort of sums up quite nicely. The only thing I would note here is that even though this person has done ANOVA, what they've failed to then do is do a Bonferroni post-test, as we looked at in class, to actually work out what the significances were. They've just simply done the ANOVA and got the general significance across the whole group, of lying, sitting, standing and cycling, but not then worked out where those differences actually exist. Moving on to the use of figures, if we look at E7, actually this is an example of the type of figure that I don't want you to include. I said in class before that the inclusion of figures should be there to highlight something you particularly want the reader to see. Now actually this graph here doesn't show anything useful at all. There's no actual relationship shown in these graphs, and if you look at the R-squared values, they are very, very low, indicating there's no relationship to the data and the lines being presented here. So this is an example of a poor graph to include in the report, because it doesn't actually aid the understanding of the write-up at all. E8 is better. Now you have average data here, and showing some relationship, although the use of an R-squared value in here with only 4 data points is questionable. The other thing is, as it is average data, what this really needs is error bars. Each of these lying down, sitting, standing and cycling points need to have error bars on there to show the reader the range of data, and they should be both vertically and horizontally in this case. So they should look like extended crosses. Moving into section F in the discussion, what we have here is in F1, F2 and F3 are all introductory opening remarks for discussion. And what they're doing here is that they're showing that there is some output to the study that's been conducted. So each of them are looking at the hypothesis or the objective of the study and then saying how this relates to the data that they found. When you look into F3, again this relates to when the hypothesis presented and saying here that moderate exercise demonstrated by pedaling on an ergometer or ergometer is shown to significantly increase VSO2, VO2 and energy expenditure, and the result indicated strong correlation between energy expenditure and heart rate. Now again here what the person is doing is they're showing how, very simply in an opening couple of sentences, how the data that they've got relates going back to the hypothesis and the point of the study in the first place. In the other section of here, through F4 all the way through to F8, we've got different aspects here, again relating the data, and in this case putting in the context, in F4 putting in the context of established studies. So it's showing here that the data is consistent and actually relating the studies to which the data is consistent with. The others here, again, what you're looking at is a good use of citation and references to relate the findings back to the data in the literature supporting the evidence that's being presented. F7 and F8 here are examples of summation sentences. So here we're rounding up the sort of concluding sentences at the end of the discussion. You could write this as a separate conclusion if you wanted to, but it's not absolutely essential to. And here in F7 we have a quote coming from this particular paper here, and F8 here we have again just an opinion that based on exercise we could increase this, and again that would be supported by citations. Last thing I've included here is an example of some Harvard referencing, again just showing these are single authors, but obviously if you have multiple authors you would expect to see the list of authors here with the year the title and the journal that they are taken from. I hope you find this useful, and I look forward to seeing your reports.